Hello everyone, welcome to day 21 and the next week again begins, okay? And I hope that you have utilized the entire last week and finished all the themes that we had started of IGP. And now we will be moving on to the key constitutional pillars, features of the Indian Constitution, okay? And the other key themes. Now these themes are important for you for all stages, for the prelims, for the mains, for the interview. And also it is very important that it is key even in the GS paper, even in the Pol Science paper, and you will utilize these things even in the essay, okay? Even in certain parts of ethics you can quote certain articles and other things. So make sure that you have a very good command and grasp over these sections. Now how will we distinguish studying, understanding the preamble, the fundamental rights, the fundamental duties differently from what we do in the GS section, okay? So let's just give this a light. As I will show you the constituents, you will come to know that how we have to do this a little more differently, okay? So yes, today 21. So when we study the preamble in the GS, okay, obviously we understand the philosophy, we understand the text, the various ingredients, the words, their meanings. Now when we understand it in political science, okay, there is a little more depth to which it has to be understood, which means to what extent we are linking it with key theories, key values, okay, and what is the implication of these values. So when we say sovereignty, what is the implication of this sovereignty in that context? What is the implication of values like justice, liberty, equality in that context, okay? So it is not only merely understanding those adjectives, but also what is their implication, how they have been done, okay, right? That is very important. And this is how your IGP sections will differ. So for example, if we look at, the DPSP, what has been the view of scholars on the incorporation of the DPSP? What have been the debates in the assembly, right? Then what has been the context of DPSP in the era of globalization? So you have to merely reading and understanding beyond that these different dimensions and their application, okay? So not only studying the judgment is obviously essential, but understanding this implication, understanding the application of these things in the real time, and the various debates amongst the various schools of thought, okay? That is what has to be done in DPSP. Then fundamental rights. Now here the most important part will be what is the evolution of jurisprudence on different articles. Like for example, if we are talking about right to freedom of association. So what are the kind of association? Which associations are we talking about? What have been the Supreme Court philosophy from the starting, from the independence until now on different associations? Okay, with respect to freedom of speech cases, what are the different cases? What is the philosophy highlighted in those key judgments of this? So this jurisprudence, how it has evolved on these different themes is what you will have to understand differently in the IGP section, okay? Now, fundamental duties also. So what is the debate on rights and duties? What does Gandhi say on rights and duties? How they are complementary to each other? What these duties embody, like how it is a political obligation also on the part of the citizens to obey the state, right? Hobbes also talks of political obligation, Locke also talks of this concept, Rousseau also talks. So how political obligation on the part of the citizens to obey the state, how you link these? To what extent bringing in such kind of things has brought a change in the mindset of citizens towards the state, whether it has brought in more consent based obedience or no, okay? So these kind of more debates we will have to understand. Now I'll show you how a question can be interpreted in that light. That I think that will be enable you to help you understand this more better, what I was saying about application, implication of things. Now, preamble contains a solemn resolve which nothing but a revolution can alter. How we would have interpreted this in GS and how we'll interpret in PSIR, I'll show. Contains a solemn resolve which nothing but a revolution can alter. Preamble contains a solemn resolve which nothing but a revolution can alter. And we are talking here in the context of preamble. So if you would have written about this particular question in general studies and PSIR, let's see what will be the different approach. This actually will enable you to real time understand that how we have to interpret things for political science. So preamble contains a solemn resolve. What is the solemn resolve? Okay. What is the philosophy and the value of the particular context in which we are talking? And in this context, how different amendments, right, different judicial interventions, right, on the amendability of the preamble have come into being. And you will largely explain the solemn resolves, okay, which means how we have spoken of different values, unity and integrity of India. So in GS, it will be just actually explanation or elaboration. Very few students will write implication. But the same answer when we will write in PSIR, see how broad you will take the idea. To what extent it can be made broad, to what extent it can be linked with the application. I will show this to you. Please very carefully watch and listen. Okay? So when we say preamble is a solemn resolve which nothing but a revolution can alter, what is the interpretation of this statement? Which means there has been some revolution, I am talking of PSIR, okay? And this revolution has brought in some values, some philosophy, some aspirations which has led to this entire text in the preamble. But in GS you will only write this text, okay, which means the meaning of the words, adjectives and other things in the question. GS में इतना extensive लिखेंगे तो examiner को भी difficulty हो सकती है. So a revolution, right, is what when we talk. So the revolution is the Indian freedom struggle. And this Indian freedom struggle brought a lot of aspirations, it brought in a constitution, a new constitutional order, and this constitutional order is defined in this text. But is our question ending here? What does it say? The preamble contains a solemn resolve, means it is so pure, but nothing that a revolution can alter, which means one revolution led to this text. So even if we amend this text, its basic structure, its basic philosophy cannot be lost. And even if we have amended, brought in new changes within this preamble, it has not violated anything. Why? Because what we have added had already existed before the creation of this preamble. है ना? And now tomorrow, if a second revolution occurs, like another struggle happens, for example, from being a democracy, if India becomes a tyranny, a dictatorship, then this whole preambles and this text, everything will change. So if we become that kind of a nation, we embody a completely different value in our system, then the preamble will change. So nothing but a revolution can alter. आने वाले समय का revolution जब आएगा, only then the complete structure will be violated. Whether that revolution is good or bad, that we are not asking. But the preamble, the spirit within it is so fundamental to us that even if we are amending it with time, if we have added some words, the adding of this word has not changed the whole philosophy, spirit of this preamble, because it existed prior. So before adding socialist or secular, okay, wasn't India secular in that sense prior to adding these words? Weren't we having some socialist aspirations of society prior to adding this word? So it is saying that preamble contains a solemn resolve which nothing but a revolution can alter. So the fundamental precepts, the identity card, the vision of the Constituent Assembly and the forefathers of the making of the India remain intact. How much ever changes we bring, it will always be in alignment with this vision. And only a completely different revolution can change this fundamental precepts. Have you understood this interpretation? Okay. Now let's move to the question. Okay, this is the interpretation of the question. So we begin this question. Okay, I will take to you one by one in statements how this had to be applied. Okay, so rather than explaining this to you, I'll show it to you how an answer of the same preamble is to be written in political science. What should be the different language, what should be the different implication and application of these values that you have to write in pol science, which usually you do not explain in so much detail in the GS section. Okay, understood? Come. So first I say that already one revolution had occurred and it brought some changes. So what was that? So it was the freedom struggle. What was the aim of the freedom struggle? The aim of the freedom struggle was a comprehensive political, social and economic revolution. So the Constitution of India in itself is a revolutionary document because it brought a new order in society. It brought a new order in society. Earlier we were a colony. Now we were independent, we had our own institutions, systems, everything. We had some autonomy, right? We had different legitimate systems that came into practice. So Constitution is a revolutionary document and this shows self-determination of the people who were colonized. So first we talk of the aim of the freedom struggle. What was the result of the freedom struggle? The Constitution. And this Constitution's index, this Constitution identity card, this Constitution's philosophy and values are embodied within the preamble. Okay? Then we say yes, it is the preamble which is the result of this revolutionary document. So it is the identity card of the Constitution. Okay? N.A. Palkhiwala calls it the identity card. Now you have to quote these scholars. So the challenge that comes in these parts within IGP is remembering a lot of names, remembering statements, otherwise your answer will be just a GS answer. Okay? So Palkhiwala embodies, he says, the preamble embodies the basic philosophy and fundamental values, political, moral, religious, on which the Constitution is based. It contains the vision of the Constituent Assembly, the grand and the noble vision, and reflects the dreams and aspirations of the founding fathers. So you understood, I have not started from preamble, I have started from the revolution. And this revolution is not like that Marxian revolution, okay? Or not like the Aristotelian revolution actually. So it is about how, he also talks of revolution and any small changes in the Constitution, but this is a completely new order from the colonial order. That's why the Constitution is a revolutionary document. Now, so when we say nothing but a revolution can alter, which means even if we have added something, this always existed in the preamble. It is the fundamental of the whole polity. So the nature of Indian polity would not have been different from what it is today, despite the amendment made to the preamble. Example, addition of the word socialist, secular and integrity in the 42nd amendment. तो ये ऐड तो बहुत लेट हुए हैं, लेकिन ये पॉलिटी के कैरेक्टरिस्टिक फीचर्स हमेशा से थे. Okay, and yes, there has been critical attitude towards this, how we say that secularism is not relevant to Indian context. We are a deeply religious society. Okay, those debates are different. Don't bring them here. Okay. Now, next is sovereignty of the people. How we will address this in the application. So, what does sovereignty? Here you are not explaining the meaning, you are explaining the application. So, sovereignty shows what? Sovereignty means respectful place to India in the country, and this is being expressed, this application has been expressed in the preamble. Then we will be talking of, when we say the ideal of democratic republic, it manifests what? Which means the polity guaranteeing the people fundamental right of choosing representatives and fostering democratic governance in the country. Okay, and it shows how power emanates from the people. So rather than explaining democratic character, we say what is the application. इसका मतलब यही है, we choose our representatives, we are the people who are actually choosing who will rule us, who will lead us. Okay, then even the states of the union are not parties to the creation of this union, which was created by the people of India. They cannot claim a right of secession. That's why unity and integrity is preserved within the preamble. Ki even if this has come into later and states have not been party to the formation of the union, but that does not mean the states can recede. Okay? Preamble not only affords stable democratic but solidifies the unity and integrity of the nation. So you understand how the words have changed. It is the application of every term that we have to explain in IGP. तुम लोग सिर्फ adjectives को समझाते हो कि sovereignty मतलब ये, लेकिन ये sovereignty का preamble में होने से इंडिया पे क्या impact है? We are enjoying this respectful place that we hold this preamble. It shows that vision. Okay, next. By making India a republic, what is the message? The constitution made a crucial break from the British suzerainty, right? Then, though the term socialist added later, but it was existing in the form of DPSP. Okay, so we had the socialistic pattern of society in the Avdi session. Then the notion of secularism. This is a long enduring value of Indian socio-cultural life. We have always accommodated various people from various religious orders, and we have been very tolerant of that. Okay, so not only found commanding heights through the judicial pronouncement, secularism basic feature, but also delving deep into the psyche of the people as well as the government alike. So we show the implication of secularism. Okay, next, preamble presents a wish list outlining aspirations of the people which they expect from the government of India to secure for them. So values like justice, equality, liberty, fraternity, these ideals do what? So don't have to explain the meaning of justice here, what it leads to. Not equality, हमें पता है क्या equality है, हमें पता है justice क्या है, हमें पता है liberty. उस term को explain नहीं करना है pol science में, उसका application क्या है? These ideals act as benchmark to guide the policies and programs of the government. Okay? In future to cast India into the mold of a welfare state. This is what the preamble. So nothing but a revolution can alter this. है ना? Now, also equality of status and opportunity is seeking what? To bring in egalitarian society in India. Okay, fraternity amongst the citizen does what? Right? It respects the dignity of every individual. Framers wish to create a social democracy in India. How you link these key terms? Then clear that unity and integrity is a precondition for all these cherished ideals, okay, to become a reality in independent India. Then Thus, the utility of preamble we can see because it is a beacon light to the courts for interpretation also. So, how the philosophy that has been embodied in the constitution forms the basis of various judgments when it comes into constitutional interpretation and conflict. That if the preamble embodies these values, which means it has to be upheld, and preamble has been quoted by the courts for interpretation of the constitutional articles. Okay? Now, so it called upon to discharge the grand duty of interpreting of the constitution and real intention of the framers of the constitution. So, preamble is the repository of spirit of constitution. Hidayatullah points that it is that resembles the Declaration of Independence like the US, but it is more than a declaration. Thus, only a second revolution after the freedom struggle could alter its very basic structure. So, you have now clearly understood how you all write answers in IGP and specifically from these kind of themes, and that's why you don't get marks in IGP, because you don't bring in that implication, the application of these terms like we use it in political science. That's where the answer changes. That's where how broad you take the interpretation of the particular question. Now, I'll show you the same thing in the second question also. So, you'll come to know real time how to apply, okay, PSIR knowledge in IGP. So, let's see this question. Please focus on the board. Very important. Constitutionally reconciling FR with DPSP has led to frequent amendments and judicial intervention. और question ने बोला है comment. I am rewriting the question for you. Question is saying constitutionally reconciling which two things? FR and DPSP. This has led to two things. One is amendments. Who is doing this? Obviously the Parliament, okay? And the second thing, it has led to judicial intervention, which means judicially is through various cases talking to the extent of which these amendments are valid or no. And then the question is saying comment. अब क्या इस question में हमें, if it was a GS question, what you should have written? So you should have said that FR and DPSP, okay, from where the conflict has begun, from which particular case, which amendments were nullified by the judicial intervention, okay. So you will be largely using the case laws and writing this particular question, है ना? चंपाकम दोराय राजम, शंकरी प्रसाद, गोलकनाथ, ये सब केसेस का लिखकर जीएस में इस आंसर को लिखा जाता है. पॉल साइंस में ये क्वेश्चन सिर्फ ये केस लॉज का है क्या? केस लॉज तो आएंगे, बट व्हाट इज द ब्रॉडर आइडिया यहाँ पर? वी हैव टू शो दिस पावर स्ट्रगल between whom? Between the judiciary and the parliament. So question is not only about the case laws of interpretation of FR and DSP. Underlying idea इन दोनों का जो ये हो रहा है, FR वर्सेस DPSP, कोई इसको बड़ा कहता है, कोई इसको छोटा कहता है, कोई बोलता है नहीं बहुत सारा कॉम्प्लीमेंटैरिटी है, ये दिखा क्या रहा है? It's showing this power struggle. So on one hand, yes, we have that kind of a constitution which has provided the feature of amendment because there is changes, our constitution is dynamic, society brings a lot of change. So we have brought in that kind of a very good mix. We don't have even rigidity, neither we have flexibility also similar to the UK. That simple majority से सब चीज़ें हो जाए, नहीं. और ना ही US की तरह एकदम rigid है. We have a synthesis somewhere, we have a mixed model, okay. So we start and pick up this question about amendments in the constitution, the power of amendment, why it is there, what is its importance in two-liners. Then we will be talking of one, that the parliament brings in because it represents the people, it has that kind of power. But when the parliament questions, when the judiciary questions the sovereign body in that sense, sovereign is not like it is absolute sovereignty, but it is sovereign because it represents the people of India. So when the judiciary is questioning this and assuming to itself that sovereign characteristic, this is also problematic. It leads to imperium in imperio, okay. So you criticize both of them, that yes, the parliament also and the judiciary both have to maintain this balance when we are talking out the feature of amendment. ये भी करते हैं, parliament also does, and judiciary also. So you show this power struggle with respect to amendments of the constitution, and that's why this continuous things happen. And then you talk of the case laws. That's how the answer will differ in political science. Now I'm explaining this in detail so that once you understand this philosophy and this spirit, then things will become easy for you. Okay? Now let's see real time how this has to be done. So standard feature of constitution that they provide mechanisms for amendment. Yet few constitutional democracies have such rich as well as controversial experience with constitutional amendment power as India. Because this is showing now one side frequent amendments, one side दोनों एक साथ power struggle कर रहे. The Indian constitution amendment procedure adopts a middle ground between US and USA. So we have a synthesis of rigidity and flexibility, both, right? And the middle ground provide single text which informs state action, that is the constitution, and a document itself which is flexible also to the changes in the society, like economic growth, modernization, okay, and political accommodation of various interests. Then we say the meaning of Article 368 have invited constitutional adjudication and debate, and amendment power since 1973 is interpreted in the light of doctrine of basic structure after Keshwananda Bharati case. Now, Parliament is bound by the constitution and has the power to change it as well. So, because we know that we have a synthesis of parliamentary sovereignty and judicial supremacy, and overall we have a constitutional supremacy, okay. So parliament is both bound by the constitution also and has the power to change it. This suggests that parliament was conceived as more than an ordinary legislature. It was regarded as representative in a deeper sense. If constitutionalism is about distinction between sovereignty and the government, then judicial review, which is judicial intervention here is obviously through judicial review, can only legitimately judge government with respect to sovereign rather than judge the sovereign itself, okay. Now, the moment judges review constitutional amendments, they are reviewing the expression of sovereignty. So Adam Smith says in his lectures on jurisprudence, to suppose a sovereign subject to a judgment, which means they themselves becoming sovereign, which means suppose another sovereign. Who is the another sovereign? The judiciary. Okay. Now, even if you don't bring these statements, it's fine. Obviously, your content has to be enough rich, which should be like pol science. But if it is not, then also see how the amendment, what the amendment power says, how the parliament is representative of the people, how judiciary also need to exercise limitation. Okay, now, judicial review eventually is also very important. I say how? Serves as a check and prevents a legislative body from usurping power. So we are giving views for both organs. We say parliament is sovereign, it has the power, it represents the people. If judiciary is questioning this, then it is assuming another sovereign, which means itself as sovereign. However, judicial review is important also. Why? Because we have the doctrine of checks and balances. Then let's come to justiciability and non-justiciability of DPSP, justiciability of FR and non-justiciability on the one hand, and moral obligation of the state to implement DPSP have led to a conflict between the two since the commencement, and there you pull in the case laws. So you don't have to start this question directly hitting the case laws, no. You explain what is the spirit of the question, what both these bodies are trying to do. So you're showing that power struggle. You can't use that word obviously, okay, but you have to show it in this light. Alright, now you talk of the case laws. So yes, Champakam Dorai Rajan, Golaknath case, then Keshwananda Bharti case. So then you give this views of different scholars on this particular power of amendment. So K.C. Weir says that procedures contained in the constitution have a lot of variety, it is rarely found. Granville Austin says it appears complicated but it is diverse. So question was talking of comment, that's why we are writing views. So don't be absolutely critical towards these things. Now have you understood real time how to write IGP answers? What is the application level that is expected? If you can do this kind of application, then you can pull in your marks in IGP, and that's where the scores will go high. Otherwise you will keep doing the same monotonous things that you have been doing. Okay? Thank you so much. All the best. I hope you learned a lot.